Hoje no KMS trago uma pessoa que representou algo muito importante através de um livro. Qual livro? Este livro, ok? Este livro de um senhor chamado J. Abraham, que eu tive a oportunidade de estar com ele já nos Estados Unidos, e ele é um dos marketeers mais famosos do mundo, um dos marketeers de referência, e, portanto, esta é uma entrevista que, de certa maneira, estamos a fechar o ciclo, porque a primeira vez que eu conheci o J. Abraham foi através deste livro, acho que já foi em 2003, salvo erro, 2003, 2004, já não tenho bem a certeza. Este livro salvou-me de uma falência, okay? Salvou-me de um momento em que as coisas não estavam bem no meu negócio. Eu tinha cometido um erro que era pôr os ovos todos no mesmo cesto. Esse cesto rebentou e eu ia ficando sem pé, basicamente sem pé. E foi através deste livro que eu tirei uma série de ideias que me fizeram dar a volta. Ora, anos mais tarde, mal eu sabia que ia conhecer e ia estar a jantar com o Jay, e portanto foi um prazer enorme, e agora é uma honra enorme trazer aqui ao nosso podcast e ao nosso canal do YouTube aqui o J. Abraham. O Jay é uma pessoa que tem uma mente super, super complexa, e portanto nós vamos ter esta entrevista em inglês. Ainda não temos as legendas, mas assim que tivermos depois colocamos, e portanto boa entrevista, um abraço e vejam com atenção. Então vá, vamos ver o J. Abraham.
Todos os dias o empreendedor tem de efetuar 3 vendas: a venda a si mesmo, a venda à sua equipa e a venda ao cliente. Para que isto aconteça com a maior eficácia possível, precisamos de algo muito forte: marketing. Marketing é a única resposta possível para fazer crescer pequenas empresas que não têm um músculo financeiro para enfrentar os tubarões do mercado. Por isso, a pergunta é: como é que podemos fazer um marketing que seja poderoso e ao mesmo tempo não esvazie os nossos bolsos? O meu nome é Ricardo Teixeira, sou empreendedor há mais de 2 décadas e um apaixonado por marketing. Todas as semanas procurei partilhar estratégias e táticas de marketing que procurem responder a esta pergunta. Bem-vindo ao Kiai Marketing Secrets.
Jay, thank you very much for accepting this invitation.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I hope that I can add some perspectives and some thoughts that will help your listeners, readers, followers all get a greater boost out of whatever they do and add more value to whoever they do it for.
So you in the marketing world, digital or offline, you are a legend. And like we were talking before the recording, this book completely changed my life. And I think this book is completely timeless, because we can grab to the book and still apply to digital, offline, whatever, because the principles are there. So what do you think, what is your definition about positioning, and how you communicate that to the audience?
Well, I mean, it's a general question, but let me try to give you a meaningful answer. So I've had the, I guess, privilege of positioning a lot of people, clients, experts, speakers, authors, and myself. And what I try to do is always, I try to dimensionalize a couple of things. The unique distinctions that individual possesses, and I try to do it in ways no one else has. So with me, when I was creating my brand years ago, and nobody knew who I was, I had to figure out, how do I want to be seen by the market? And I started, first of all, I had a background that I worked with clients at the time, and I had some great success stories with some very prominent US brands. And it was very lucky because they were very well known, and I had the great fortune of having been the strategist for them. So I was able to use that, but then I built on it, sort of layering. I built on it by saying, why could he do that? And I had a bunch of other successes because he sees things no one else does. I established this man, Jay, looks at a business from points of view, from levers, from performance elements that no one else has ever seen. And I used metaphors and similes. It's very much like someone who is looking through a nuclear microscope for the first time, and they see all these dimensions. And then I would say that I taught people in the early stages. This is pretty funny. When I first started out, because I'm much older than you, before the internet, most of the big advertisers were what you'd call institutional. They were brick and mortar. And most of these people and the agencies that helped them and their marketing and advertising people, they didn't understand all the things that today you probably teach free to people. They didn't understand variability. They didn't understand testing. They didn't understand allowable costs. They didn't understand unique selling proposition. They didn't understand risk reversal. They didn't understand front end, back end packaging. They didn't understand upsell, downsell. And I understood it very well because I came from those environments, but I made a choice to teach that which was very common to people that didn't know it. And I was the equivalent of the one-eyed man in the land of the blind, if you know what that means.
Yes.
And then as I got popular, I was able to identify in dozens and then hundreds and then ultimately over 1,000 industries, common performance elements for different industries that everybody already knew about in that industry, but that no one knew about outside that industry. So I was able to take relatively common strategies, business models, value propositions, lead generating, conversion, distribution channels, access vehicles that were just nothing special in industry A, but nobody in industry B or C or D knew about them. And then I was able after that to take elements from industries B and C and D and combine them into hybrids that nobody knew about. And I got explosive results for less risk. And I was able to build it. And then as I did that, probably not unlike you and your colleagues, I gave them names that gave them a little bit more sort of mystique. You know, I had the 3 ways to grow a business model. I had the 9 drivers of exponential profit. I had the power Parthenon of geometric growth. I had the sticking point solutions. I had the 12 strategy pillars. Then I kept evolving it. And I created sunk cost marketing. And I have about 40 of them now. But I just kept trying to delineate that I understood ways to grow a business that no one else did. And I always was different than most people because my approach was never that I am a tactical person, although I knew tactics. It's that to really grow a prosperous, sustainable business, you have to look at it strategically first, that all the actions you take tactically have to advance and enhance the big game plan, the strategy, and that most small, medium businesses are tactical. They don't even have a good strategy. They're just erratic and episodic. And I was able to articulate in ways I don't think anyone else did at the time for myself. And I did the same for all the experts I ever helped. The distinctions that I was able to get people to see in ways no one else did. I was able to contrast. I was able to compare. I was able to demonstrate. I was able to denominate, meaning just showing why something was so much better. I was able to give people I liberated people because I was able to show them that great marketing is not really an art, it's a science. And as a science, I may be a better scientist than you, but it's learnable, it's teachable, it's infallible. So it's not smoke and mirrors and mystical. Anybody can do it if they just understand. And then more than that, you don't have to be great. You just have to ask great questions of the market and let them answer them, because they'll always tell you what to do more of, less of, what appeal is the best, price is the best, risk reversal is the best, media is the best, everything about it. And when I was always able to liberate people and show them how much more was possible for so much less. And I was able to elevate their sense of what was possible. I was able to give them a true sort of a reality check to challenge their limited thinking. And I was also, because I got very deeply involved early in my career, way before the concept of affiliates ever came to being, in strategic alliances, joint ventures, endorsements, something I call power partnering, co-branding, referral marketing, things that nobody ever thought about when I started. And so I was able to show people how much more yield and result they could get by finding people that already had the same audience, by finding people that sold something that an entrepreneur would sell after or at the same time, so they could partner, or they could share media, or they could share leads. And I was able to think nonlinear. And I guess the last thing, it's a long answer, was that every time, most of my work was really what I call on the front lines of capitalism. I wasn't theoretical. A lot of people don't really do it. They do it a couple of times and then they sell it. I always was handling 20, 30 clients. I did it around the world. I did it through translation. I got paid for results. So I really spoke a truth that was based on the word is empirical understanding, but it means really understanding true result producing methodology that I was overseeing or creating or strategizing for all these different businesses. And I got to look at hundreds of different strategy approaches, hundreds of different business models, hundreds of different value propositions, hundreds of different ways to attract leads and convert them and upsell them and resell them. I got hundreds of different ways to monetize somebody when you theoretically had nothing else to sell. And I was able to share that. And then I had probably the ability to distill it and present it in a very easy to consume way, with a lot of examples, a lot of case studies, a lot of real world proof that people could easily translate and adapt and adopt. But that's a very long answer to your question.
And so, but you spoke a little bit about some concepts that I learned from here, from this book, that I have to say to the audience that you have to read this book, getting everything you can out of all you've got. Because this book changed my life. This book saved my life in 2004, I think.
That's wonderful.
And one of the things that I learned from here, which I still today apply, and I also teach my students, I always credit your name, which is the geometric growth, about the 3 ways to grow the business. And it sounds sometimes so simplistic. I used to have like I still have 3 whiteboards with new clients, average per sale, and frequency. I still have.
I love it.
To know exactly what I'm doing. So, what do you think are the biggest mistakes that people usually do when they apply this strategy?
Well, they don't apply it in as many ways as they can. Most people, even very frankly, with all the Facebook and all the optimization, they're really only optimizing a very small window of what entails the totality of the lifetime revenue system. So they don't test or experiment or question or even identify enough of the factors, the forces, the levers that exist in their revenue system. So they don't even come close to multiplying the performance. Second, our system, give you a really simple example, our default system wants us to find the one optimal way. And that's good, but there may be 3 or 4 additional ways that aren't quite as optimal, but are very profitable. And nobody uses those. They only find one. I long ago figured out you can penetrate a market from 20, 30 different ways concurrently. And if you can do that, you should do that. But most people look for the one thing that the algorithm says is optimal, and then they just keep doing that. And I always, whenever I had a client, the reason we were able to grow clients, 10,000, 20,000% in a year was I refused to just say, okay, we're going to do it this way only. We would do maybe 10 different ways to go at the market. We would maybe have lead generating, self-liquidating, high priced. We would go through partners. We would compete against ourselves with other products. We would figure out what people bought first before they bought ours, what they bought at the same time. And we'd either sell those products, partner with those things. We'd figure out what they would buy instead of ours. And we'd go into those businesses, or we would underwrite people in those businesses and get those leads. So I did all kinds of things that I think were made possible by the expanded paradigm of understanding that all my experiences outside of one industry, and you probably know this because I think that book discusses it, but I created something years ago that I think is more important today than ever before, and I called it funnel vision instead of tunnel vision. And the concept is that if you look at most people in a given category, online, offline, everybody in the business, we call it following the herd. They all pretty much do the same thing, pretty much the same way. And you're only going to be incrementally a little bit better or a little bit worse. And it's not going to give you breakthroughs. It's going to give you incremental improvement. But the problem is, and it's not a negative, but if I discover a method that everyone else is going to be using soon, then I only have a short-term advantage. And all of a sudden, that advantage becomes a standard of operating that everyone's got to do. And I got to find another one and another one. And most people look for it within their industry. If you study great breakthroughs, the greatest breakthroughs in our history never came from within an industry. They almost all came from without. And so I'm always looking at what is there out here that everyone doing the same thing in this industry the same way would never think of. So I do that. But I've learned how much more you can command and demand out of time, out of what I call opportunity cost, access to the market, advertising, a lead, a relationship. And I know so many more ways that I can make that produce profit and results, and most people don't. So the big mistake is they limit enormously what they could be generating from the opportunity because they either don't know how much more is possible, or they fall victim to trying to find the one optimal way that the algorithm tells them they should do only. And I think that's a very tragic mistake.
Can you come up with a story that you remember about applying this concept and suddenly completely explode?
Yeah, I can tell you what I did in a consult today. I have a client
Awesome.
that sells essential oils, just oils, the stuff that I use.
Yeah.
And they do about $20 million selling them the way everybody else does. But since I've started working with them, we've set up branded approaches for industries. We've got 3 deals we just did. We set up a podcast series to their database and outside, where we interview other people in related fields, metaphysical, spiritual, everything that relates to oil. We've created a product for runners. We've created a product for tennis players. We've created a product for animals. We've just made deals where we get the rights to people's best-selling previous books on subjects that are not essential oil, but other related ones, and we give those away along with the sample. We have people that are going to professionals and they set up the relationships, and we give those people all of the revenue for the first 3 months, so they'll be motivated. I can go on and on, but does that help?
Oh yeah, for sure. So one of the things I always get fascinated is about the way you think. When you look to a business, what's your framework? What exactly, what exactly are you looking for? Like the first thing and the next thing. What is your framework? Just to try to understand a little bit how your brain works.
I think I look at, and this is something that you can't just learn it. You have to have a context of experience to do this. But I think I look at it almost like you would a CAT scan or an MRI. I look at the totality. I don't look at just what they're doing. I look at what they're not doing. I look at how it's doing. I look at how many other ways they could be doing it. I look at how to make what they're doing produce more for less risk. I look at weaknesses in anything from if they're running ads, the headline, the proposition, the proof, the risk reversal, the call to action, the credibility, the bonus, everything, the price, everything that could be altered, that could double or redouble. And I do that. I look at how to extend the value. So you sell one thing, I look at how many other things you could offer, not that you have to create, but that you could acquire from other people. And I look at how to take a one-shot sale and make it ongoing. I look at how to take the sunk cost of acquiring a buyer who might buy only one thing and be able to monetize them in a number of other ways. I have a very strong focus on how to monetize unsold prospects, leads, opt-ins, visitors, and also inactive past buyers. I look at all kinds of things that I don't believe most people experientially would even know to look at, but I'm very aware that all those, there's two sides. One are all the elements in the performance of their revenue system that they aren't even aware exist. And then I look at all the alternative, my office is right on the runway of a private airport. Then I look at all the different things they could be doing in addition to or instead. And then I produce a hierarchy of what to do first, second, and third for a maximum safety and rapid monetization. So that, when I look at a business, I basically split it into two ways. And it was in that book. First thing we do is maximize what they're already doing, even if what they're doing is not the shrewdest, it's just what's working sort of for them. We try to make it better so it'll throw off more capital, more profit that can be then used to multiply all these additional approaches, ways, paths, and so it's pretty automatic now, but I think I've learned to look at it from all these different, I look at it orbitally, I look at it diagonally, I look at it circularly, I look at it, from every connective point. And it gives me a perspective that is very unique. But then I have the ability, which I don't know that everybody could do this, because I can draw on 40 years of experience on 5 continents in 1,000 industries and very quickly access either a reference experience or a methodology or a combined hybrid methodologies that I can apply, and I can do that pretty rapidly after doing it all these years.
Yeah, and so for sure, when you do some consulting or you advise an entrepreneur, for sure, sometimes the entrepreneur will say, I don't know if it works. I don't know if there are sometimes some mindset or beliefs or whatever that doesn't allow sometimes the entrepreneur to go forward. How you
deal with that? And
Well, a couple of ways. I try to disclaim in the beginning, and I explain that I am able to present things that seem very simple or elegant or logical or illogical, but it's the result of very sophisticated understanding and the ability to bring it down to what I call lowest common denominator. And then what I normally do also is I give them 1 to 5 case study examples that are happening. So I can say, well, you may not believe it, but here's how this company did it. Here's how this company did it the same way. Here's how this company did it. May not work for you, but it worked 5 out of 5. So perhaps it's worth a very conservative, safe, quick test. And if it doesn't work, it's probably not going to not work 100%. So you'll get back, and I'm very big on, I find it very sad that people try to jump in and not let the market tell them. They don't try to ask questions of the market, because if you do, you can test a lot of assumptions, a lot of variability, a lot of possibility, a lot of alternative realities very inexpensively. And even if you lose on a bunch of them, when you win, the wins are so significantly outsized that they dwarf the losses. And most people don't allow that really powerful testing, experimentation, asking the market to tell you instead of telling them. I don't think people test anywhere close to the amount they should, or the number of variables they should, or the product, service, possibilities, packages they could. And I think if they did, most of them would be producing a lot more profit from whatever they do for a lot less cost, risk, and time, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. Testing is one of the key things in marketing, and one of the tough tests that I usually find with my students is like pricing.
Yes.
How do you approach price? Because we were talking a little bit about my prices and all my products. How do you?
It depends. It's not a one answer. It depends on the business model. If all you sell is one thing, which you shouldn't, then maximum price is important. If you sell many things that are progressive, maximum buyers might be more important. If you sell different segments of the market, you might have different strategies depending. I had a client many years ago, and we had 2 totally different strategies going at the same time. One was designed to bring in cash flow. The other was designed to bring in break-even buyers who would buy a lot of other things, and we balanced the 2. This is the big problem, and I think one size can't and won't fit all, because you have different dynamics, and every time you add one more element, it changes. For example, if you have an expensive product and all you do is sell that product, then you either have to have a pretty compelling salesman or woman or landing page. But if instead you sell a very low price product and you get a lot more people to start that and you win their trust, then you can sell the big product for a lot more profit, because you've already sunk the cost in the front end. If you add another expensive product or service on the back end, you could double or redouble the profit of the buyers you have. If you package different upgrades, it can double the profit, not necessarily the revenue, because you got the sunk cost and whatever the marketing cost you. But I look at all those and I try to formulate what we call the optimal integrative strategy for whatever that business's ultimate goal is and how we're trying to get there. And it differs business to business.
It's amazing. And one thing that is associated with the pricing, and the first time that I heard that expression was in this book about risk reversal.
Yes.
Did you apply to like all the business, or
most of them? I mean, even when we were, I did it in either direct or indirect ways. When I was in the gold brokerage business for many years, and we had a really unique way of applying it. We would not let anybody buy from us the first time they contacted us, even if they wanted to. We insisted that they first gain a comprehensive, balanced understanding of gold and silver's role in an investment portfolio. And then we would call them back. And if they were comfortable, then we would sell them. And they were shocked. But I also, when I did seminars, my own, we would not deposit their check or credit card until they, had attended 2.5 out of 5 days. We would send out a $2,000 grounding package before they even came out. And if they applied it, in essence, we would buy the tuition for them with the profits they made. We would ask them at the very end whether they got the $5,000 or the $15,000 of value, and if they didn't, we would return their money on the spot. We were we were the opposite of most everyone else. And today I do private consulting, and I have no control over how a client will execute. But I always want to be the investor, not the recipient. So before I'll ever take a client, I'll spend sometimes a couple hours getting to know their business, letting them get very familiar with how I think and what I would look at if we work together, and make sure they get a payoff from the time, whether we ever do business or not, because I just want to be the one who's taking the risk first. And so I live that philosophy, but I've used risk reversal. And just as a reference to your people, I have tested risk reversal many, many, many ways. Many times I've seen changing or adding a more significant risk reversal, 40, 50% increase the revenue, sales, conversions. I've seen it increase the commitment for long-term. I've seen, there's just so much that I have gotten into, but the whole idea of risk reversal, most people don't really get it, and they don't really utilize it to its fullest potential. Anytime any two people come together to transact any form of exchange, business, friendship, love, marriage, anything, one side is always asking the other, either knowingly or unknowingly, verbally or non-verbally, explicit or implicit, to take on all, most, or more than all the risk. And if you understand what those risk factors are, both in tangible and intangible terms, and you can eliminate them, mitigate them, reduce them, make better than reduce, because there's better than risk reversal, where worst case people come out with a reward. You tend to make it easier for people to say yes than no. And if you think about it, the mistake a lot of people make is they think that their competition is only other people in the same field. It is not. There's two other ones. One are people selling alternative ways to get the same outcome. A good example would be if you and I were selling a weight loss supplement and we thought that our competition was weight loss supplement companies. It's not. We're competing against people who sell packaged food. We're competing against personal trainers. We're competing against exercise machines. We're competing against recipes. And the worst competition is we're competing against procrastination, equivocation, contemplation, inaction. So you have to understand that if you don't really recognize all the forms of competition that you as a marketer, a businessman or woman, entrepreneur, professional are having to compete against, you can't win the competition, can you?
Yeah. So we spoke a little bit about pricing, risk reversal, and you said that you have been in like 5 continents. Do you see any difference in terms of the way people apply these concepts or the way people deal with it?
What do you think about
But,
that?
but I mean, the good news is I have massive success stories. We were talking, and I have them in Japan. I have them in China. I have them in Vietnam. I have them in Italy. I have them in France. I have them in UK. I have them in Amsterdam. I have them in, where else do I have them? I have them
In a lot of countries.
yeah. So I mean, you got to adjust for culture. You got to adjust for, for orientation. The one thing that was probably the hardest for me when I started doing work in Asia originally, and I was there 15 or 18 years ago, the Asian culture, I don't think it's as much now. And Latin is actually very similar. They don't have a strategic, they probably better now, but both Latin America and Asia tended to be more transactional, tactical, and static. They really weren't oriented towards playing what I'll call a long game, seeing the ability to get repeat business and build ongoing relationships. They just sort of hit and ran. And I had to work very hard in Mexico when I did a lot of work there, and in China, and in Vietnam, and in Singapore, and I also was in Thailand, trying to teach Malaysia, trying to teach them to think strategically and not tactically.
Wow. And so you said that it was like one of the hardest things. Do you have like a story where, it was
Yes.
tough to work around?
Yeah, well, I have a story. I had to basically, it was very hard. The first time I did there, I had 850 people in I think maybe 2000 that were paying $5,000, which was a lot of money in China. And I had to do it through translation. And I had to try to get them to trust me, to see a different way of conducting business, to demonstrate to them through example, to show them on a board or on the screen how changing from tactical to strategic could redouble their not only their business but their predictable future business. And it was very time consuming, but I was able to be very successful. I had the largest candy company in the world, or in China, went from number 5 to number 1 in about 2 years. A local motorcycle manufacturer was able to go all over Asia for no investment at all because they used a strategy I taught them. But I had to be more nurturous and nourishing. It took longer, and I had to repeat it and show it to them from many more vantage points because it wasn't conducive originally to their cultural prejudice. They were very tactical. They would look for a way to make money now and then move on to another way tomorrow. And I had to show them that was a very limited and very low yielding way to conduct business, that if they basically tried to build a business for forever and they looked at a relationship not as a single transaction, but as a perpetual ongoing transaction, and if they only had one or a few products to sell, they would find other products so they would make the relationship ongoing. That changed everything, and we had thousands of success stories. But it just took a long time because when you're going into a culture that is a lot of and probably in Latin, but in Asia they were traders. They were deal makers, but they were static. They would just do a deal and then try to do another deal. It wasn't, let's build a buyer that'll buy over and over. Let's create a portfolio of repeat business forever. Let's offer more value and let them see how and that we do it. Let's do things that no other transactional competitor does. It was very slow and hard, but after 15, 18 years, I made the point and we were very successful. The challenge I have in China, now China and the US don't have the greatest relationships, but back then, every time I would go out there, somebody would knock me off, means they would take my methodology as their own. And I had a great difficulty with that. We have something like 40 million copies of these books that have sold there, but I've only made $3,000 in royalty totally because everybody plagiarizes. And
yeah. I think Japan and China are totally different in terms of.
Yeah, Japan's got more integrity, but it's interesting. They also, I did a lot of work in Japan for about 10 years, and I had the same issues. I had to really work hard to get them to be nonlinear, to see other possibilities, and to be experimental and to be strategic.
A lot of the entrepreneurs, or I call them pre-entrepreneurs, because they want to be, they are like and they want to be entrepreneurs, but they don't know how to start or what are the main steps or the main things that they have to do. What do you usually tell them? Because I know that you deal with a lot of business, business above probably like 1, 10 million, 15, 100 million.
Yeah.
But when you are talking with the solo entrepreneurs, people are starting, what do you usually tell them that they should focus on?
I always say, if you're starting a business, find someone to partner with who already has a relationship with the same profile market, and make them your strategic marketing partner, and try to get as many of them as you can, because you reduce dramatically your risk, you enhance rapidly your ability to generate business, you get credibility in the marketplace very quickly, and you have not only the credibility, but you get that endorsement you can use in subsequent advertising. So it achieves a lot of goals. And most people don't do it because they go out and they think that they're going to be brilliant at advertising and marketing, and they're going to make $1 million on Facebook easily because it's a piece of cake. And I think that if you can get them to start doing that, then they use the profit to understand and maximize digital marketing, and they use the profit to experiment until pay quality people. The most interesting thing in the world is that startup entrepreneurs try to cut corners. They think they're great copywriters, or they think they can write mediocre copy and that's going to be fine, or a mediocre landing page, or mediocre emails, or mediocre funnels, and they don't understand that the difference between mediocre and really good or great is doubling, redoubling your success.
We have a common friend, which is Brian Kurtz. He's an amazing guy. I love him.
Yes.
And with him, I start to look deeply into direct marketing, and in the old days, like he usually says, in the old days, in the 70s and the 80s, where we didn't have Facebook, or we didn't have a lot of possibilities that right now we have in terms of ads. Like we put an ad in Facebook, and tomorrow, or maybe like in the next hour, we have leads.
Yeah.
And so in direct mail, you had to be very, very good in copywriting, very, very good in ads. What would be your advice to study so people can have very, very good ads?
Well, I mean, I studied classic copywriters who had to be very, very masterful at understanding the human condition. They didn't have technology. They didn't have graphics. They didn't have, any of the tools you have now.
Yeah.
If you're talking to your audience who read in Portuguese, I think it would be to your advantage for everybody to get some of the classics. A lot of them are out of copyright anyhow. So if you found original versions of some of the old classics, any revised version would still be copyrighted, because every time they revise it, they can copyright it. But if you find the original versions, they are long out of copyright, and you could reprint that yourself without paying anything. And it could probably be a course that you would teach them. And then, do you have Amazon there?
Yeah. We have Amazon through Spain. We don't have Amazon Portugal, but Amazon Spain and Amazon UK and.
So, but if they get it, but if they don't speak regular Spanish, they wouldn't be able to understand it, would they?
No, we understand. Well, the Portuguese have a big advantage because we study English at the age of 5, and we.
Okay, well, so let me give you one of my best strategies, which will help for copywriting. So most people that try to write copy, and a lot of copywriters will teach that, there's a formatic or formula, and there are formulas, but it overlooks getting into what I call the mind of the market. And if you understand that your goal as a copywriter is to be able to express in words and imaging and analogies, thoughts that people hold deep in their subconscious, but have never particularly been able to verbalize, things they want to get close to, away from. And you realize, obviously, you probably teach it, that people are not buying things, they're buying the result that those things produce, the benefits. And so what I created years ago, I called the Amazon.com School of Business, and it's pretty cool. Basically, you take whatever your product or service is, and you go to Amazon or anything like Amazon, and you go for 3 years, this year, 2 years, 3 years back, and you look at the top 10 or 20 best-selling books in that category, at any category that is related, and you look at the title, the subtitle, and the chapter titles, because unfortunately, most books sell more because of the promise than they do the content. And then the key is you go to the reviews. And I think at Amazon here, I don't know about in Spain, there's 0 to 5, 0 being terrible, 5 being great. When people are passionate, happy passionate, angry passionate, when they're satisfied or dissatisfied at the peak, their subconscious overrides their conscious, and they express themselves in some magnificent and amazingly wonderful ways that a copywriter could never do. Clarity, analogy, just preciseness. And if you scrape all the negatives for all those books and all the related kind of books, all the positives, and then you do it again, you go to discussion groups and you do the same thing, and then you go to the reviews of all your direct and indirect competitors, and you take all of that and you organize it 3 ways. One are the titles of the books and the subtitles. Then the next is all the negatives and all the positives. You can use those language patterns for headlines, for body copy, for bullets, for emails, for landing pages, and you're going to be far more impactful than what a typical copywriter would do. So there's an idea for them.
I love it, because right now I'm writing a book, and that is a great tip, so I can look for it. That's awesome. So last question, because I want to be very respectful to your time.
Yes.
What would be your, you probably don't know, but only 4% of the Portuguese company, they do more than 1 million euros. Okay. Only 4%. So it's a small country. We are like 10 million people. And so people sometimes are very narrow because they don't go abroad. What would you say so people can knock out completely the plateaus that sometimes they reach and they cannot, break through?
Well, there's a great quote that I was told years ago. It's a guy named Bob Proctor, but I love it. He says most people, they struggle with a silent fear that haunts them, and the fear is, am I worthy of this goal? Can I really take my business any further? I don't think so. Can I really make any more money? Can I compete? He says it's the wrong question. The right question, when you realize how much more is possible, from time, relationships, opportunities, media, leads, the right question is not, am I worthy of the goal, but is this goal worthy of me? Because so much more is achievable. I've been very privileged. I know how much more performance you can get out of a business. I know how much more performance you can get out of media. I know how much more performance you can get out of a lead or a buyer. I know how much more performance you can get out of partners. But most of the people you're talking to, they don't know that. We have a concept we created, which is called the unlimited business checkbook. And in essence, what it states is whatever resource you think you are limited by because you either don't have money or expertise or technology or salespeople or product development, you're never limited. Somebody else has it, and all you have to do is figure out how to access it in a way that makes them excited about partnering with you. And if you do that, you can grow, you can double, redouble again. That's my best answer.
That's awesome. So, Jay, thank you very much again. It was an honor to be here with you.
This is great. This is great. And I hope it's good. And get Brian a copy, because whenever I do a good interview, we use it too, and we'll put it out on our podcast. But this is good. I hope this helps you, and I'm flattered that it made that big of an impact.
Thank you very much. Thank you again.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Cool. Awesome.